traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So the U.S. blockade in Venezuela has led only U.S.-bound tankers of crude to leave the country since Maduro was extradited. The blockade is shutting off Venezuelan oil from Cuba and, more importantly, China and Iran, but most importantly, China. And that led to this curious development we talked a little bit earlier in the program with Justin Logan about from the Cato Institute. The newfound strategic alignment between the Canadians and the Chi-Coms, which is a bit troubling. One of the things that has been said, the Canadian Natural Resource Minister, Tim Hodgson, following meetings in Beijing, historic meetings in Beijing, said PM Mark Carney. What we heard loud and clear is China is looking for reliable trading partners that don't use energy for coercion. A little passive aggressive there, Minister Tim. Yeah. Let us know how the Chinese communists, that partnership with said, ends up working out. Right, Chinese communists, but they're not interested in coercion. The entire raison d'etre of the Chinese Communist Party is coercion. Good grief. Those are the kinds of things you have to say to paper over an unholy relationship. And Beijing is looking to import more oil from Canada. So, I mean, really just want to get into the geopolitics of oil. And to help us do that, we're pleased to be joined again by Amity Shlaes, who is the board chair of the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, winner of the Hayek Prize, and best-selling author of The Forgotten Man, A New History of the Great Depression, and the book Great Society, A New History. Amity, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
So glad to be here.
So I enjoyed your piece, the oil, Venezuela's problem, and sort of the tragedy of plenty that you went through in the piece. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds on Venezuela's history, but how that history informs how what the U.S. is doing now is likely to play out, I think, is the question that's more salient and in everybody's minds. And given the history that you understand about the relationship between Venezuela and America and the oil industry and how that has or has not been properly leveraged for the benefit of the Venezuelan people, what do you see as likely scenarios to come?
Well, forgive me, I'm going to talk a little history. Mm-hmm. In the olden days, as apparently now, we thought pretty simply, natural resource, you can sell it. Good. So when you come to a troubled country, what's the first thing you do? You organize the resource, and then the other aspects, maybe the republic, the democracy, come after once the country is wealthy enough or stable enough to proceed. That's sort of the hidden text now, and it was always the hidden text with Venezuela. Back in the 60s, people thought that Venezuela's hope was its energy. Venezuelans began to see that oil wealth or commodity wealth is poison. One political leader, an economist there, called oil the devil's excrement. And that can be true now. I think everyone's so worried about avoiding labels, and, we don't want to look like President Bush and talk about democracy. But to come in the same style and say, well, the oil's the important thing, and by the way, we'll have a hand in it under the Monroe Doctrine or whatever, is to repeat Venezuela's history, not to allow Venezuelans to write new history.
Well, although that's a pending issue, isn't it? I mean, part of this is whatever sort of short-term deal they have with the remnants of the Maduro regime, and what the agreement, the expectation is for elections to come, so that there's an opportunity to move away from the sorts of autocracy that Venezuela has been for the last 2 decades.
Yeah, there's Dan to my left for once. Absolutely. You can hope, and we do hope, but oil is their problem. I saw another column this morning that said oil's worse than cocaine for Venezuela. It's a weapon or it's an addiction. The country needs to move beyond oil, and what's really different this time is countries both need oil and don't, compared to before, because we have other forms of wealth we've developed. We're not dependent on the Middle East either, the way we used to be had we had this discussion 30 years ago, had these events happened 30 years ago. Not now. Thank you, in part, Harold Hamm and horizontal drilling, domestically or in Canada. So we're in a much stronger position, and so could be Venezuela. And the republic or democracy part of Venezuela's future, I think, is important, and we need to send strong signals on that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like comparing oil to cocaine, oil, powers an economy and is still central to doing that, and everybody recognizes that, and so there's an opportunity here. I don't know. The only way that you see oil as a scourge, it seems to me, is if you have no respect for private property rights, which of course has been the record of Maduro and Chavez. But if you didn't nationalize industries, and if you respected private property rights, then that's an industry that would be a boon to the Venezuelan people and could be again.
Absolutely. But what the article is about, I mean, I'm a little dedicated to this because I worked on it a few years with my colleague Gaurav Tiwari at the Council on Foreign Relations. By the way, these arguments are not right-left arguments, which makes them very refreshing.
Yeah.
Is that there's something about one commodity that wrecks the country, and where what follows is suppression of individuals and individual thought and suppression of property rights. So it's no accident that women don't have rights in oil-rich countries by this data study. It's no accident that other forms of economic growth or other currencies tend to get suppressed. What happens when you have a commodity is men surround it with guns. There will be blood, as in ancient Texas. And it's pretty sad, and it's kind of interesting to think about and worth thinking about as we look at the new world. That's the point I'm making. I can't predict the foreign policy outcome for Venezuela or for the U.S. or what happens with Cuba, but oil is more than a power game for the United States. It's a true problem. So Dan, I'm going to disagree with you humbly right now.
Really? Well, I mean, before we go full Paul Thomas Anderson there, with there will be blood. America is an oil-rich country where women have rights.
Well, what our study found, I can't believe I'm saying this on the radio, okay? But what our Sparry study of mine, there's an Apple podcast about it, and here's where I agree to a great extent, I don't know, with Jeffrey Sachs or could be even George Soros, is that countries that have the rule of law in place, such as Norway or the United Kingdom, both with significant energy discoveries, or the United States, we spread our rule of law to Texas, and they came to agree with it and support it. Those countries will become a nice source for economic growth that seeps around and spreads to all and provides jobs, as in the Dakotas with continental resources. With the horizontal drilling there brought a lot of benefit to the Dakotas. In countries where there's no rule of law, well, then those other good things we see, like property rights and all the things that go with economic growth, don't seem to arrive. And that has been the learning curve of the IMF and World Bank, who are, of course, involved in all these things. And you used to go to the World Bank and they'd say, well, take the thing that the country has and make it export it. And then everything will smooth out and the country will join the ranks of developed and democratic nations. But it just didn't work out that way. So I want to just say, here's Amity's footnote to this matter. That's what concerns us. Of all the countries in the world that could have done all right, Venezuela was the one. Everyone was so hopeful. If you remember how exciting Caracas was in the early 60s, it was, oh my gosh, it was, it was like Havana before Castro, a happening place in which U.S. people participated, in which America participated, and it went the other way. And in the case of Venezuela, oil was the cause. Imho.
Well, okay, but I stipulate to all of that, but it seems to me like this is cart in front of horse. So, for example, if Javier Milei was made the president of Venezuela, if he had been a Venezuelan rather than an Argentinian, and he is ushered in the next election to be the president of Venezuela, and he focuses completely on the establishment of property rights, and which is the foundation of Western civilization, and is successful, then do we still have the same oleaginous problem in Venezuela? It doesn't seem to me like we would.
I mean, you wouldn't, but is that the signal we're sending right now? I mean, you have to watch Marco Rubio's.
I'm sorry.
You have to watch Marco Rubio's face and see what happens next. But that would be a good outcome.
So you're saying the United States should be sending these signals, or maybe explicitly saying what we hope to see in Venezuela. This is going to be ultimately self-determination, the Venezuelan people, but by the Venezuelan people. But what we hope to see is something like what Milei is doing in Argentina. We hope to see private property rights. We hope to see an end to governments nationalizing industries, foreign or domestic. We hope to see, and we hope to see this because this is the way to enrich the Venezuelan people and to make that a stable country going forward.
That signal is really important, and Venezuelans need to participate in that. It reminds me of the discussions subsequent to '89 and that is the end of the Berlin Wall and the division of Europe. Like, who's going to do well? The less sluggish countries do well. The countries, I think Poland is a good example. The more market-oriented countries do well. What signal do we send? We don't have to invade, but we have to send a signal of the importance of that. I'm looking for the Cato Institute in Venezuela, and not just we'll cut you several deals relating to oil that have to do with our regional security, our hemisphere management. That's an important signal for the U.S.
I get that. Let's say,
can I ask?
Go ahead.
I'm saying, can you live with that?
Yes, I can. Yes, I know I can live with that. Can I ask you a question about foundations? Like a Robert Conquest Second Law of Politics question about foundations. Since you're the chair of the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, I was surprised to read this piece from Craig Shirley in the Washington Times the other day. He writes, 45 years after the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation, it is going the way of so many other formerly conservative institutions like the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Fund, now the Wallace Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and so forth. It's turned aggressively left. He's talking about the Reagan Foundation. Turned aggressively left, completely forgetting its reason for existence. The foundation, he writes, has thrown Reagan's own conservatism onto the ash heap of history to embrace leftism and moneyed elitism and all they entail. He talks about certain recent board members, including Elaine Chao and Condi Rice. He talks about his books on Reagan, 6 of them, now gone from the library site, including Rendezvous with Destiny, which actually was a really good book. He talks about other books from Art Laffer, Peter Schweitzer, Peter Robinson, Milton Friedman being removed from the library. And yet the triumph of Nancy Reagan, which was done by leftist Karen Tumulty, is prominently displayed, and so on and so forth. Do we have, I mean, are you a subscriber to Conquest's second law of politics, that if an institution is not explicitly right and explicitly conservative over time, it will drift left? And do you know anything about whether or not Craig Shirley is accurate in his description of what's going on at the Reagan Foundation?
Well, I don't, but I do know that foundations tend left. That's because nonprofit people like to go left because they like to be liked. And you know what? It's not easy to be liked if you stand up for market these days. But this is an old phenomenon, too. I remember there was an appallingly amusing and appalled letter from Henry Ford back in the old days, where he, one of the descendants of Henry Ford, the founder, saying, "I'm done with the Ford Foundation. You're subverting Henry Ford's principles. Bye-bye." And that tends to happen. I would also point out that 45 years is a pretty good run.
Yeah.
Nothing is permanent. But that's what happened to universities. I mean, all our universities, a good share were founded fairly conservatively, and look at them now. So it does happen. It happens in private companies, too. When you have government pressing on you, I don't know what's wrong with foundations and why they do that. At the Coolidge Foundation, we're quite determined that not happen to us. But after you and I are gone, the truth will out. We'll see. One thing is having a strong board of markets people. Markets people need to be on all boards, and they aren't always. You look at every foundation, it's the board that matters.
Yeah.
And the board has to still believe. The Bradley Foundation has stayed very conservative. I would concede that the Coolidge Foundation is a donee of Bradley. But who cares? The main thing about Bradley is under Ambassador Graber, the head, they're still as pro-market as they've been at other points. And that's an older foundation, the one in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. No, sure. I'm familiar with it. Yeah. Some of it's like the Olin Foundation, John M. Olin, who purposely sunset the existence of his foundation because he feared exactly what we're discussing. So anyway, I just the Reagan Foundation. It's just sad to see if that is indeed becoming another casualty. It's just sad to see something associated with Reagan going that direction. Amity Shlaes, board chair of the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, winner of the Hayek Prize, and best-selling author of both The Forgotten Man, A New History of the Great Depression, as well as Great Society, A New History. Amity, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Dan Proft, Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm Rob Cole, owner of Cole Digital in Frankfurt, the finished basement experts. Our CAD